Let's dive right into this, because there is a massive, overarching master plan hiding in plain sight, and I am going to break it down completely. Today, I am taking us straight into the absolute deep end of the multiverse. We are going to meticulously unpack the precise mechanics of how Kang the Conqueror's ultimate victory is the very thing that leads directly and inevitably into the reign of Doctor Doom. I want us to painstakingly pull apart the fabric of reality, look at the hidden timelines, and expose this grand, eon-spanning chess game that has literally been playing out right in front of our eyes. If you truly want to understand the sheer, overwhelming scale of what is coming next, you have to understand how the end of one conqueror's story provides the exact foundation for the ultimate destruction that follows him. I am going to walk you through this step by step, completely unpacking this transition from the multiversal war to Doomsday without skipping a single terrifying detail.
Let's start with a crucial realization, and I want you to really let this sink in. Kang the Conqueror has already won his multiversal war. Think about that for a second. We are so incredibly conditioned to experience stories where the heroes are desperately trying to prevent a villain from winning some upcoming apocalyptic war. But here, the entire paradigm is completely flipped on its head. The war is over. Kang's variants fought, realities were conquered, and the ultimate victory condition was met long before we even understood the stakes of the game. If we are going to see Doctor Doom rise to absolute power, we have to recognize that he is stepping into a landscape that has already been utterly decimated and completely restructured by a previous victor. To understand Doom properly, we have to establish right off the bat that Kang's absolute triumph is already a locked-in historical fact of the multiverse.
And listen, we're not dealing with a standard run-of-the-mill villain who just appears out of nowhere with some generic evil plan to take over the world. We are dealing with a conqueror who has made the actual concept of time his absolute slave. What does it actually mean to be a conqueror on a scale like this? It means sitting completely outside of time. It means watching the universe take its very first breath, and then sitting there to watch it die its final freezing heat death breath, and doing that millions of times over. Imagine the absolute numbing apathy of knowing literally every possible outcome of every single decision that has ever been made. He didn't just win a battle. He subjugated existence itself. He knows exactly how reality operates because he has physically broken it apart and rebuilt it with his own hands countless times. Let me walk you through the original timeline of events that led to this incredibly catastrophic state, because it all operates on a very specific mechanical chain reaction. Phase 1 happens the exact moment of being like Kang begins time traveling and traversing between universes. Right then, the natural order is irreversibly disrupted. Moving to phase 2, this unnatural movement causes the singular time flow to violently split, branching out completely uncontrollably. Because of this infinite unchecked branching, the actual lifespan and spatial capacity of the universes begin to shrink. Basically, the multiverse simply cannot handle the load of infinite exponential growth. And this is where the raw math of existence just completely breaks down, leading us straight into phase 3, which is mass instability, triggering massive universe-ending incursions. It's a domino effect of cosmic proportions, and it is the absolute foundational mechanic of everything happening right now. So, the absolute most crucial point here is understanding what these incursions actually are. An incursion isn't just some magical glowing portal opening up in the sky. It is the catastrophic physical collision of two entire realities trying to occupy the exact same space at the exact same time. Picture two literal Earths physically smashing together in the atmosphere until absolutely nothing remains of either one. These incursions are exactly what He Who Remains was talking about when he mentioned the multiversal war. It wasn't just armies shooting lasers at each other across some barren battlefield. It was a brutal physical battle for time supremacy itself. When the variant Kangs fought for dominance, they literally used these incursions as weapons, purposefully crashing entire realities together to wipe out their rivals. That is the true unimaginable horror of the multiversal war.
Now, this next concept is going to completely shatter everything we initially thought we knew. I really need to clear up a massive misconception right now. The sacred timeline is not just one single Earth's timeline flowing peacefully in a straight line. For the longest time, we were all led to believe it was just a single fragile thread of existence. But that is a complete masterful illusion. The reality of the situation is far more complex and honestly, far more manipulative. The sacred timeline is actually a carefully curated collection of multiple different threads meticulously woven together to look like one cohesive string. It is a highly controlled environment. Think of it like a terrarium built by a madman purely to ensure his own survival and dominance.
Let me explain exactly how this grand illusion was actually maintained. It's deeply unsettling when you look closely.
It was crafted by He Who Remains so that no multiversal threats could ever possibly emerge to challenge him. Step 1. He actively isolated volatile events across completely different universes. If a historical event was deemed too dangerous, he separated its timeline completely. Step 2. He actively and aggressively manipulated character destinies. He ensured certain people never met each other, or that certain heroes always won their battles, just to maintain a very specific, perfectly safe outcome. And step 3. Anytime free will caused a branch that deviated even slightly from this heavily curated script, he ruthlessly pruned it. He wasn't just trimming the cosmic hedges, he was running an absolute dictatorship enforced through continuous, timeline-erasing violence, all brilliantly disguised as protecting the natural order of things.
Which brings us to the man who orchestrated this whole nightmare. When He Who Remains said those 3 words, "I end it," it wasn't just some arrogant boast about stopping a war in the past. It was a dark, highly calculated warning about exactly how he maintains his control. Think about the chilling tone in his voice when he delivered that line. It was a statement of absolute, terrifying fact. He ended the multiversal war by ending free will altogether. He ended infinite possibilities by trapping all of existence in a closed loop, and the underlying threat to anyone listening was crystal clear. If you disrupt this loop, if you kill me, I will not be here to end it the next time around. The chaos will immediately return and the war will resume. What he built was merely a pause button, definitely not a permanent solution.
Because of that, we really have to understand the current fragile state of things. We must recognize that Loki's new multiversal tree is absolutely not the entire infinite multiverse. It is just a small, localized collection of realities that will be the very first to face destruction. When Loki took the throne and grabbed all those dying branches, he didn't instantly recreate the massive infinite multiverse that existed long before He Who Remains took over. He essentially just built a makeshift life raft. This tree is a fragile, finite structure, and it's surrounded on all sides by a boiling, aggressive ocean of chaos. Out there, way beyond the branches that Loki is physically holding together, the true, raw, infinite multiverse has actually always existed, just waiting to crash back in. The tree is nothing more than the front line of the incoming war.
So let's look at how this builds into the grand, overarching structure of time. Reality has actually gone through 3 distinct eras, and the transition between these specific eras is where the true horror of all this manipulation is revealed. Era 1 was the original raw timelines, completely chaotic, infinite, and filled with absolutely terrifying, unchecked threats. Era 2 was the manipulated sacred timeline, where He Who Remains completely suppressed all that chaos, edited character lives like a movie script, and forced a sterile order. And now we are in Era 3, the multiversal tree, where that suppression is entirely gone. The branches are growing wildly again, and all the raw, dangerous elements of Era 1 are beginning to violently flood back in. Understanding these 3 distinct phases is the ultimate key to understanding why a figure like Dr. Doom isn't just some random new villain popping up. He is an inevitable cosmic reaction to the dam breaking.
Let this absolute mind-bending fact sink in for a minute, because it brilliantly illustrates just how insanely deep the manipulation went during that second era. In the raw, chaotic timelines of the first era, certain characters had vastly different, incredibly dangerous lives. A massive multiversal threat who naturally should have been someone like Dr. Doom was literally manipulated by He Who Remains into becoming a much safer localized hero like Iron Man purely to keep the peace. He literally neutered the apex predators of the multiverse. He looked across reality at the most dangerous figures, the ones actually capable of challenging his throne, and altered their timelines so they would become heroes or ordinary people or simply cease to exist entirely. He rewrote the very DNA of reality to ensure he remained the only god in the room.
But remember that pause button I mentioned earlier? It has been completely lifted. The dam has officially burst. Right now, we are witnessing the multiverse desperately trying to correct itself, returning to its natural, terrifying baseline. Now that the manipulative sacred timeline is completely broken apart, those original, incredibly dangerous forms and threats are bleeding right back into our reality. All of those suppressed destinies, they are rapidly awakening. The variants of characters who were forcefully written to be heroes are now reverting back to their true, terrifying forms across the newly expanding branches of the tree. We are witnessing the return of the true apex predators of the multiverse, and they are starving for control.
Knowing this completely changes how we have to view Kang's absolute desperation when he was trapped in the quantum realm. We all thought he was just being a cruel, megalomaniacal tyrant wiping out realities for fun. But when you look closer, he was frantically plugging holes in a rapidly sinking ship. He was trying to save his conquered multiverse from these returning original threats.
When we saw him staring at his multiversal engine, systematically wiping out entire branching Earths, it wasn't just random chaotic malice. It was highly calculated defense. He understood perfectly well that without the TVA constantly pruning the branches, the original raw threats were coming back to challenge his entire empire. He was trying to maintain his iron grip on reality before the returning chaos consumed everything he had spent eons conquering.
But here is the fascinating part. Kang's true obstacle wasn't ever the heroes standing directly in front of him. His real obstacle was Immortus, his own oldest future self. Immortus resides in limbo, a place existing completely outside the normal flowing rules of time. He is virtually immortal, and most importantly, he has already lived the entire bloody life of Kang the Conqueror. He knows firsthand the sheer unadulterated destruction that a younger, fiercely ambitious version of himself will unleash upon the multiverse. He knows it because he actually committed those atrocities. Therefore, Immortus views his younger selves not as allies or brothers, but as a fatal cosmic cancer that absolutely must be eradicated to preserve whatever is left of existence.
So what exactly does a godlike being do when he needs to wipe out literally infinite versions of himself? Immortus orchestrated a completely brilliant hidden master plan. He assembled the Council of Kang specifically to pit Kang against his own variants so they would do the dirty work and wipe each other out. It is an absolute masterpiece of multiversal manipulation. He essentially builds the ultimate firing squad, puts them all in a massive circle, and tricks them into pulling the trigger on one another. He brings them all together under the grand guise of shared supremacy, but carefully sets the board so that Prime Kang will inevitably go to war with the rest of the Council. Immortus' ultimate victory condition isn't ruling an empire. It's an empty room where the variants have completely annihilated each other, leaving only him to manage the ashes. Let me pull back even further and show you the grand, overarching scope of this, because it is truly staggering. This specific iteration of He Who Remains played a multiversal chess game across literally eons. He arranged for Avengers from the present, Kang from the future, and Doctor Doom from the past to eventually and inevitably collide. Absolutely none of this is a coincidence. The sacred timeline, the suppression of cosmic threats, the deliberate allowance of specific time travel events like the time heist, it was all meticulously designed by this master planner to funnel reality itself toward a very specific final conflict. He used the heroes as mere pawns to stall the villains, and he used the villains to violently test the heroes. He was engineering a grand collision, gambling his own existence to set up the ultimate battle for supremacy at the literal end of time.
Right now, as this massive collision approaches, the Council of Kangs aren't just standing around cheering in some cosmic arena. They are in absolute, utter panic mode. They are currently either frantically securing their own isolated branch timelines, or they are destroying them entirely just to save whatever is left of the multiverse from the incursions. That brief glimpse we got of them jumping into their respective branches, that wasn't a victory lap. That was them preparing for the end of all things. They are preemptively blowing up their own realities just to scorch the earth and deny any resources to their rival variants. It is a state of absolute panicking, chaotic warfare across infinite dimensions right now.
And this is exactly where the trap finally snaps shut, bringing us perfectly, beautifully to Doomsday. One absolutely terrifying scenario is that Doctor Doom simply hijacks Immortus' entire plan, stepping directly into the power vacuum to effortlessly slaughter the weakened, distracted Council of Kangs. Think about it. The Kangs have completely exhausted themselves fighting each other, fracturing their power bases, and playing right into Immortus' trap. And right at their absolute weakest moment, perfectly distracted by their own civil war, Doom steps into the vacuum. He doesn't need to conquer a thriving, powerful empire. He just has to sweep up the broken, bleeding pieces of a shattered one. He essentially takes Immortus' carefully built firing squad, walks up, and pulls the trigger himself, establishing absolute dominance in one swift, incredibly ruthless stroke.
But let me share my absolute ultimate theory with you, the one that completely ties this entire sprawling narrative together perfectly. I truly believe that the real architects meant to manage the end of time were always meant to be He Who Remains, Loki, and Doctor Doom. Those robotic lizard timekeepers we saw, they were a myth, a placeholder lie to keep the TVA in line. The reality is that the stability of the entire multiverse requires a trinity of immense power. You need the architect who isolates and plans, which is He Who Remains. You need the god of stories who binds it all together with the messy reality of free will, which is Loki. And you desperately need the ultimate iron-fisted ruler who can enforce rigid order when chaos reigns, which is Doctor Doom. These three are the true original timekeepers. Just imagine it. Imagine them sitting at a table together in the crumbling citadel at the end of time, looking out over the dying, expanding multiversal tree.
Which leaves us with one final incredibly chilling question to ponder as we watch this all unfold. Will Doom actually sit down and negotiate to save reality, finding some twisted balance between Loki's chaotic freedom and Kang's rigid order? Or will he simply look at the chaotic mess they've made and choose to burn the entire tree down just so he can rule over the ashes? Everything we have discussed today points directly to this inevitable, cataclysmic showdown. The Conqueror's War is well and truly over, but let me assure you, Doomsday is just beginning. Think about that as we wait to see exactly how the very fabric of reality is rewritten next.